Chapter 1. The Trash Young Lord and the Awakened Memories. Autumn winds howled through the sprawling avenues of the heavenly flame imperial city, carrying with them the chill of approaching winter and the crisp golden leaves of the profound ash trees. The streets were typically a chaotic symphony of merchants hawking spirit beasts, cultivators bargaining for low-tier pills, and the clatter of armored patrols. But outside the opulent entrance of the drunken immortal pavilion, a suffocating silence had fallen over the crowd. A thick ring of onlookers had formed, their eyes filled with a mixture of pity, amusement, and sheer contempt. In the center of this ring stood a young man. He looked no older than 16, dressed in a once elegant silk robe that was now covered in mud, footprints, and tearing at the seams. A trail of dark red blood leaked from the corner of his lips, dripping steadily onto the cobblestones. His breathing was ragged, his chest heaving with every painful intake of air. Yet, despite his battered state, the young man's back remained as straight as a spear. His eyes, dark as the midnight sky, burned with an unyielding, ferocious light. This was Shen Yuan. To the commoners and the nobility alike, his name was synonymous with two things: profound privilege and absolute garbage. He was the sole heir of the Marquis of Ironblood, the great general who commanded the Empire's northern armies. His father was a legendary figure, a man whose very name made rival nations tremble. But a tiger father birthed a dog son. Shen Yuan's Dantian, the spiritual center required for any cultivator to gather qi, was naturally crippled. It was a leaking sieve. No matter how many expensive medicinal baths his father prepared, no matter how much spiritual energy he tried to absorb, it all vanished into nothingness. In a world where the strong devoured the weak, being unable to step into the first level of the qi condensation realm made him less than a peasant. It made him the greatest joke in the Crimson Moon Empire. "Still standing, trash?" A mocking, arrogant drawl echoed from the steps of the pavilion. A youth stepped forward, waving an intricate jade folding fan. He wore luxurious golden robes, and his eyes were slanted in a perpetual sneer. This was Wang Teng, the second son of the Minister of Finance. While Shen Yuan was stuck as a mortal, Wang Teng had already reached the third heaven of qi condensation. Behind Wang Teng stood a group of sycophantic young nobles, laughing obnoxiously at the spectacle. "I have to admit, Shen Yuan, your skin is as thick as the city walls," Wang Teng chuckled, snapping his fan shut. "I beat you until you spit blood, yet you still look at me with those defiant dog eyes. Do you really not understand your place? Your father is at the border, fighting a losing war, and you are a crippled toad who is still dreaming of eating swan meat." Wang Teng leaned in, his voice dropping to a cruel whisper. "Princess Yun Shi is a heavenly genius. She has already been accepted as a core discipline of the mystic ice sect. Tomorrow, she will formally petition the emperor to annul the marriage arrangement between your two houses. A piece of trash like you isn't even fit to wash her feet, let alone share her bed." The crowd murmured. The royal engagement between the crippled Marquis's son and the brilliant Princess Yun Shi had been a sore point for the entire imperial city. Shen Yuan spat a mouthful of bloody phlegm onto the ground, missing Wang Teng's expensive boots by a mere inch. A slow, mocking smile spread across Shen Yuan's bruised face. Shen Yuan, Shen Yuan said, his voice raspy but loud enough for the entire street to hear. I've always wondered, Wang Tang, did your mother drop you on your head when you were a baby, or did you have to practice diligently for years to become this much of an idiot? The crowd collectively gasped. Even the whispering stopped. Wang Tang's face instantly darkened, the ugly veins popping on his forehead. What did you say? You heard me, you powdered peacock, Shen Yuan sneered, rolling his shoulders despite the agonizing pain. You boast about your third heaven of qi condensation, yet it took you, what, 4 years to reach it? If my Dantian wasn't leaking, a pig chewing on spirit stones could cultivate faster than you. And as for Princess Yun Shi, if she wants to break the engagement, she can come tell me to my face. She doesn't need a barking lapdog like you to do it for her. You are courting death, Wang Tang roared, his fragile ego shattering into 1,000,000 pieces. Zhao Hu, break his legs. I want him kneeling on the street. From behind Wang Tang, a hulking youth built like a brick wall stepped forward. Zhao Hu was a servant, but he was a cultivator at the second heaven of qi condensation. His arms were thicker than Shen Yuan's thighs, bulging with terrifying physical power. He, young Master Shen, forgive me for offending you, Zhao Hu grinned sadistically. He lunged forward, his massive fist tearing through the air with a whistling sound, aimed directly at Shen Yuan's kneecap. Shen Yuan's eyes narrowed. He had no qi, but he had fought in the streets enough times to know how to read a brawler. Instead of retreating, Shen Yuan violently twisted his body to the side, letting the heavy fist graze his hip. In the same fluid motion, he drove his knee sharply upward into the most vulnerable spot between Zhao Hu's legs. Crack! A sound like crushing eggs echoed through the silent street. Zhao Hu's eyes bulged out of his skull. His face turned a deep, concerning shade of purple. He opened his mouth, but only a high-pitched squeak came out before he collapsed to the cobblestones, clutching his crotch and frothing at the mouth in unfathomable agony. The crowd stared in stunned silence. A mortal had just taken down a second heaven of qi condensation with a dirty street-fighting move. Useless trash! Wang Tang shrieked, his face burning with humiliation. A marquis's crippled son had just humiliated his guard in front of the entire capital. If word of this spread, he would be a laughingstock. Wang Tang's aura exploded, a visible distortion of air, the manifestation of spirit qi, wrapped around his right hand. Shattering mountain palm! It was a low-tier martial skill, but fueled by a third heaven cultivator, it possessed the force to shatter boulders. Wang Tang moved faster than Shen Yuan's mortal eyes could track. Shen Yuan barely had time to cross his arms over his chest before the glowing palms struck him. Bang! The impact was like being hit by a galloping rhinoceros. The sickening crunch of breaking bones resonated loudly as Shen Yuan's arms gave way, the force of the blow driving straight into his sternum. He was launched backward through the air, flying over 10 feet before crashing violently onto the hard stone street. The back of his head struck the cobblestones with a terrifying thud. Blood geysered from Shen Yuan's mouth, nose, and ears. His vision immediately swimmed, the world turning into a blurry mosaic of gray and red. He tried to move, to curse Wang Tang one last time, but his body refused to obey. "Young master!" A desperate weeping scream broke through the crowd. Xiao Kui, Shen Yuan's teenage maidservant who had been running to find him, pushed through the onlookers and threw herself over his bleeding body. "Help! Somebody help him! He's dying! Wang Tang stood there, panting heavily, the qi fading from his hand. He looked at the massive pool of blood spreading beneath Shen Yuan's head and felt a sudden spike of panic. I actually killed him? Wang Tang thought, his arrogance faltering. Mocking the Marquis's son was one thing, but murdering the sole heir of the Marquis of Ironblood in front of broad daylight? The Marquis was a ruthless butcher on the battlefield. If he found out... He brought this upon himself, Wang Tang shouted nervously, backing away. Everyone saw it. He attacked my servant first. Let's go. Wang Tang and his cronies practically fled the scene, leaving the weeping maid clutching the dying youth in the center of the street. As the cold seeped into Shen Yuan's bones, the noise of the weeping maid and the murmuring crowd began to fade. The physical pain, previously agonizing, vanished, replaced by an endless, suffocating darkness. Is this death? Shen Yuan thought, his consciousness floating in a lightless void. How pathetic. Born a cripple, died a joke. Father, Mother, I'm sorry. Your son was useless until the very end. Just as his consciousness was about to extinguish entirely, a profound vibration shook the boundless darkness. Deep within the innermost recesses of his soul, a place he could never perceive before, a blinding, chaotic light erupted. It was a pearl of memory, locked away by an ancient seal, forced open by the trauma of his near-death state. The light swallowed his fading soul. Suddenly, the void was replaced by a terrifying cosmic battlefield. Shen Yuan watched in absolute horror and awe as planets the size of his entire world were reduced to ash by a single wave of a hand. He saw a man standing atop a mountain of divine corpses, holding a caudal that burned with flames containing the colors of 9 heavens. The man's aura was so oppressive that even looking at the memory of him made Shen Yuan feel like an ant staring at a sun. I, Pill Emperor Cangming, have refined the heavens, the earth, and the divine Tao itself. You hypocritical gods of the 9 heavens think you can suppress me? Even if my flesh is annihilated, my inheritance shall transcend the cycle of reincarnation. The man's furious roar shattered the cosmic vision, and then an ocean of information slammed into Shen Yuan's mind. It was agony. It felt as though 1 billion needles were being driven into his brain. Memories. Millions of spiritual herbs, their properties, their ages, their conflicting natures. Thousands upon thousands of pill recipes, from the lowest mortal grade to the mythical divine grade. Techniques for controlling mystical flames, the philosophy of the Tao of alchemy, the subtle arts of saving lives and dealing invisible deaths. But it wasn't just alchemy. As the torrent of memories assimilated into his soul, a second wave of information hit him, a martial art. It was not a technique meant to circulate qi through the Dantian. It was a forbidden, heaven-defying path of body cultivation that Pill Emperor Cangming had spent his entire life theorizing, but never had the chance to practice. The Astral Chaos Body Art. To cultivate this art is to walk the path of ultimate defiance. You do not borrow energy from the heavens, you plunder it. You do not build a sea of qi in your Dantian. You forge the 9 astral gates within your very flesh, transforming your body into a living universe. The heavens will hate you. The earth will reject you. The heavenly tribulations will seek to erase you. Success means unparalleled hegemony over the cosmos. Failure means a soul scattered to the void. The phantom voice echoed in Shen Yuan's mind. Do you dare? Shen Yuan's soul, battered and exhausted, suddenly burned with a terrifying, unyielding fire.
the humiliation of his entire life, the sneers of Wang Tang, the silent tears of his mother, the disappointment in his father's eyes. If the heavens decreed me to be a cripple, then I shall tear down the heavens. I accept.
Boom! The memory pearl shattered completely, dissolving into pure, ancient energy that flooded into his shattered physical body. Shen Yuan awoke to the overwhelming stench of cheap, poorly refined medicinal herbs. His eyes snapped open. He was no longer on the cold cobblestone streets. He was lying in his own bed within the Marquis's estate. Sunlight filtered dimly through the paper windows, casting long shadows across the room. His entire body screamed in agony, his chest tightly wrapped in linen bandages. He took a shallow breath and immediately identified the scent lingering in the room. Without even thinking, a string of information flowed into his mind with absolute clarity. Low-grade blood coagulation powder. Main ingredients: 3-leafed irongrass, snakevine root. The heat control during refinement was abysmal, leaving behind at least 60% impurities. The medicinal properties conflict. Instead of healing broken bones, the toxic residue will slowly calcify the marrow. Absolute garbage. It's practically poison. Shen Yuan froze. He blinked, staring at the canopy of his bed. I actually know this? The memories weren't a dying dream? Yuaner? A trembling, exhausted voice broke his train of thought. Shen Yuan turned his head slightly. Sitting beside his bed, holding his hand with a grip born of sheer desperation, was his mother, Madame Shen. Seeing his son open his eyes, a look of profound disbelief and overwhelming joy washed over her face. "Yuaner, you're awake! Heavens be praised! My son is awake!" Tears spilled down her cheeks as she gently touched his face, terrified that if she pressed too hard he would break. Xiao Kui, quickly! Bring the warm water! The young master has opened his eyes!" The sound of crashing porcelain came from outside the room, followed by the hurried footsteps of the maid, who burst into the room with red, puffy eyes. Looking at his mother's exhausted, prematurely aging face, Shen Yuan felt a sharp pain in his chest that had nothing to do with his broken ribs. Because of his crippled Dantian, her mother had suffered endlessly. The other noble madams mocked her. The elders of the Shen clan constantly pressured her, suggesting that the Marquis should take concubines to birth a proper heir. Yet she had always shielded him, spending vast amounts of her own wealth to buy him pills and medicinal baths, hoping for a miracle that never came. And today she had almost watched him die because he was too weak to protect himself. "Mother," Shen Yuan croaked, his voice raw and raspy, "don't cry. I'm fine." "Hush, don't speak," Madame Shen hurriedly wiping her tears. "The physician said your ribs were shattered and your internal organs were injured. It's a miracle you even survived the night. I have already sent an urgent missive to your father at the border. When he returns, I swear on my life he will flatten the Minister of Finance's estate." Shen Yuan's eyes flickered. "Father is at the critical juncture of the border war. If he returns now, he could be charged with treason or desertion. The royal family would love nothing more than an excuse to strip him of his military power." "No, mother," Shen Yuan said, gripping her hand with a surprising amount of strength. "Do not distract father. This is my debt. I will collect it myself." Madame Shen looked at him stunned. Her son had always been stubborn, but there was a new depth in his eyes, a cold, unfathomable sharpness that had never been there before. It was the gaze of a predator waking from a long slumber. "Rest, Yuaner. You're burning with fever," she said softly, thinking he was simply speaking out of pride. I will go to the kitchen and have them prepare the ginseng spirit soup. Xiaokui, watch over him. Do not leave his side." After his mother left the room, Shen Yuan closed his eyes and sank his consciousness inward. He bypassed his shattered Dantian, ignoring the empty, leaking void that had plagued him for 16 years. Instead, guided by the newly integrated memories of the Pill Emperor Cangming, he directed his focus towards the soles of his feet. According to the Astral Chaos Body Art, a human body possessed 9 hidden gates that corresponded to the 9 astral stars of the primordial universe. The first gate, the foundation of physical hegemony, was the gate of the Earth Star, located at the bottom of the foot, connecting the cultivator directly to the profound energy of the earth. As Shen Yuan focused, he felt a strange, terrifying heat welling up within his right foot. It was faint, like an ember buried under snow, but it was there. And unlike the spirit key that always leaked out of his Dantian, this heat remained perfectly contained within his flesh, slowly nourishing his broken bones and torn muscles. A cruel, bloodthirsty smile curled onto Shen Yuan's lips. The pain of his shattered ribs meant nothing. The years of humiliation meant nothing. He was no longer the trash young lord who could only endure the mockery of the world. He was the inheritor of Pill Emperor Cangming. Wang Tang, Princess Yun Shi, Crimson Moon Empire, Shen Yuan thought. His eyes snapped open, flashing with a chilling starlight brilliance. Enjoy your high horses while you can. Soon I will drag every single one of you down into the mud, and I will step on your faces to climb to the peak of this world.